intro here. So for those of you that don't know, Amy Shekhter is a pop artist based out of Florida. Obviously, myself, Josh Casper, I founded Art Basel and Beyond. And, you know, part of what I've tried to do with these artist interviews is, one, we're always scoping out, trying to find the coolest pieces of art and the artists that we think have really cool, unique things that they're working on. But the second is to also just learn more like about the artists themselves, like what made them decide to make that leap to become an artist. In Amy's case, she's a full-time artist. So this is not like a side hobby or a side hustle. This is a full-time deal. So I always find it super cool to talk to artists that have really made this kind of like their lives work. The second thing is to also just like understand the inspiration behind the pieces and showcase them. What's nice about Amy's stuff is it's all really cool. So although there's inspiration and stuff behind it, you're not going to be looking at just like a black piece of paper trying to figure out like what's going on. It'll be very clear, which we'll show you when we get to some of the art. And then, you know, full disclosure, I'm very biased because I select all the artists that we interview, and I've actually commissioned Amy to create for me a James Bond piece. So going into this, everyone should know I'm a big fan, so I'm very biased. Yes, thank you. I'm very excited to see the final results. So look, you know, with that being said, you know, I see we're here, we're in your studio.
Mm-hmm.
I was originally gonna start this out by just trying to learn a little bit more about your background, but I'm thinking maybe you could actually start off by showing us one of your pieces, just so the audience could get a little bit of a sense of like your style. And then we
Yeah.
could kind of talk a little bit about your background and the inspiration behind the pieces from there.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's see. I will show you guys this one. Let me figure out. Okay, here we are. All right. So here's one of my pieces that I just finished, and it's actually going to the UK. Back up a little so you can see. And so my work is it's several steps to the process, and if you get close you can see how it's almost raised, I guess you would call it, because I make these little resin castings that I attach. I hope I'm videoing okay.
Yeah,
And
no,
then I
you got it.
also,
It's crystal clear.
okay, and then I also add other mixed media, you know, crystals and other blingy items, glitter and such. So, yeah.
Yeah, and just building off of that. So, you know, we talk about unique style, and like when we hear pop art, so much pop art looks exactly the same. Amy's work has so much of this resin work, and these additional resin pieces, we'll call them for lack of a better term, that it really is quite different. The amount of volume of resin that is on the piece. I mean, you see different types of paintings and stuff, but you usually don't see. I mean, there must be at least 50 pieces, 50 different resin attachments on that, right? Between
Yeah.
the
Here's,
branding and whatnot.
yeah. So, I mean, basically, I like to do fun art. I mean, there's no deep meaning behind it. It's just I want to, you know, I have fun making it. I want to bring joy to other people looking at it in their homes. I use a lot of bright colors. So, you know, like the ring pop, I actually make some of the casting molds myself. So that is one of them. And then you can see like the up close of the popsicle has items inside of it. So
How long
yeah.
does it take you to make something like this? Just because there's so many different components, right? You've got the image there, then you've got the resin work, you've got the resin casting. What is kind of like this start to finish time on something like this?
Um, so I do like a lot of different steps. I never just do one piece. I'm always working on a million things.
Yeah.
Um, so basically the first step is I find the image, and then I actually use brushes, like digital brushes, to repaint them so that I'm able to blow them up to, you know, whichever size. Like for example, like these two pieces, I mean, piece right here is like 5 feet. You can't really tell, but
Okay.
and then this one is 4 feet. And you know, so I don't get any pixelation because I actually am repainting the faces and the people. After I do that, here's kind of some of my collage stuff on the floor, but I use a lot of layers, and I do paint, spray paint, you know, pictures, kind of a collage process of layers. And then the next step is to make the castings. And I actually made some earlier. They're not ready to come out, but here's kind of a look at a small little area. So I pigment the resin, and then I pour it into the molds. And these take about like 10 hours, I would say, to set. And, you know, I kind of plan out like the colors that I'm using for a piece. Sometimes I make extras. So I have like drawers of different resin castings, you know, just if I need spare ones or whatever. And then after that, I have some on the floor right here that are at the next step. And so I haven't actually done the resin top coat on these, but I've placed some of the pieces that are going to go on there, so that it's, you know, ready to go on to the next step.
I'm glad that you're showing the different steps in the process because I feel that so many times when people see art, they don't, it's hard to fully appreciate how much goes into it. And
Mm-hmm.
with like the resin casting and stuff, I mean, obviously it looks like you're, if you're not mixing your own colors, it still looks like you're creating all the pieces individually. So that in itself is such a large task. But then it
Yeah.
also seems like there, like you have to figure out like where is it going to go
Mm-hmm.
on the picture. And I think sometimes when people look at art, they just kind of think like, oh, it's there, and like
Yeah.
somehow magically it got there. And whenever I go to art shows, and that's what we do a ton of art fairs, and I love to, you know, people always talk about like people watch. Well, I like to listen, and I love to listen to people talk about like pricing of art and stuff. And I'm so glad you showed that because that's like a perfect example as to like why when people buy art, like it is an investment because you need to really be able to appreciate and understand not only the amount of work that goes into it, the amount of time, but it's not as simple as going out to Walmart, buying a bunch of toys and putting it on a canvas. Other artists do that. But in this, you know, scenario, it's just really cool to see that you have full control over the entire process, even when you're doing just the pictures, doing the, is it airbrushing that you're doing or is it a different technique?
It's some airbrush, and I mean the pictures are like you can use different brushes. Like they have acrylic brushes
Okay.
on digital programs, so you can use all sorts of different. It's real fun.
I
um,
could imagine. What's that
and I
blue piece
actually,
behind you?
because you brought up like the toys thing, I actually do use toys in some of my stuff too.
Oh, okay.
And I have an example right here. I mostly do the resin castings, but because I kind of like to mix time periods, and I also like to think about things that bring people joy. So, you know, one of those is obviously childhood items,
Of
and
course. I love
uh,
Matchbox cars. And
yeah,
that's
so
fantastic. You've worked in the Chanel. What's better than that,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, so I kind of like to, you know, combine the different, like, okay, well, you know, these are joyful things for children and adults as well. So, yeah. And then I also mix my time periods as well, like as you could see with the Frida piece, you know, with the headphones. So that's fun as well.
See, now that's something that I didn't even pick up on.
Oh,
But it makes it all the more interesting, which just adds even more to it. What is like the biggest piece that you've done? Because I would imagine having to do like the digital imaging, like how big can you go with that?
gosh, I don't even know. I mean, I think the biggest I've done is like maybe 6 feet, but
Okay.
I think, you know, it's a lot of technical stuff, and I'm not like fully trained in that. And there's DPI, and you can only do a certain amount of layers in some programs and stuff. So it does get like technical, and I don't have like the exact answers, but I feel like I could get it pretty big. Like if I wanted to do like, a huge mural or something, I think, I could probably do like 10 feet. It'd be a lot of resin pieces though.
For sure. And I think I saw on your website there were some pieces too that had like resin pieces on top of the
Oh yeah. Yeah,
canvas
like,
if you're using
popsicles or
canvas.
lollipops melted on there, or little cars or whatever, like driving across the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to do things on the sides. Sometimes I'll do like the little resin pieces just along the side as well, just because I feel like a lot of artists like forget about the sides of the canvas. And it is extra work, but it's like a fun little surprise when you like turn the corner.
So how did you come up with this? Like, was this something that evolved over time, or did you just kind of like wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to create these little miniature resin castings and just put them all over these canvases? What was that like? How did
Um,
that evolve?
So I've always liked a lot of textures on my pictures. I never, just want something flat. And I think I was a middle school teacher for 7 years,
Okay,
and I was at like a low income school. We didn't have any money for supplies or anything. So I would like, I love doing 3D stuff. So I would have them bring in like the most random things like toys or like, recycled materials like bottles or whatever. And we would make like, the coolest stuff out of nothing. And, I've worked with a lot of materials because I was a teacher. And I tried resin probably about 5 years ago, and, made some castings and stuff. And I always like sculpture stuff too, but I almost like feel like I'm combining the two. I'm making sculptures, but then putting it on a 2D painting. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess it just kind of came to me.
so it seems like your background's in education. So were you ever trained like as an artist, or is this just kind of something that just happened?
So my degree is I have a master's in art education. So
Oh,
they
okay, got it.
really just touch on, like art appreciation, art history, a little bit of painting. It's not like a focused area. So I learned about a
Got it.
lot of different stuff, which also is a problem because it's hard for me to stay focused. I never have enough time to do everything that I want. I want to try this and that. And I've been like, I'm so grateful because I have been so busy lately that I haven't been able to like experiment or anything. I've just been kind of staying, with the same thing, which is good, I think. But, I still do like fooling around with like castings, making molds. Like, there's so many cool materials out there, like different kinds of foams and all like the different resins that I use. I don't just use the same resin. There's epoxy resins that are for like the top coat that make the painting look like, shiny.
Okay.
And then, I use a different like casting type resin for the pieces. Or if I'm going to do like certain colors, maybe I'll use a different one. So it's all really about like experimenting as well. It wasn't just like one day I figured it out and did it. It was kind of like a process.
There was a blue piece on the wall somewhere that I saw in the background. Can
Okay.
you show us that? I think it may have been to your left. I don't know.
Oh, is Audrey Hepburn?
It is that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so that's so fascinating. So it's interesting how like you were, it sounds like you were teaching art, so it makes sense. It all just kind of like came full full circle. I know you also had mentioned to me in one of our earlier conversations that you had some young daughters as well. Are they interested in the art? Do they ever like stop in the studio? You think
Oh
they'll
yeah,
take after mom's footsteps?
yeah, for sure. They love art. They, want to come and make it and make messes. And yeah, they're both, I have a 3 and a 6-year-old, so they're drawing and painting and doing everything all the time. I don't let them do resin because it is, dangerous for kids. But, and I don't let them do spray paint either, just because they probably do some damage. But
Yeah, absolutely. So, I notice I've seen your stuff at a lot of shows, and on Instagram, it seems like there's always like for Art Expo. And by the way, congratulations on such a
thank
successful
you.
show. I saw there that you had sold like 4 pieces before you even got there, which is fantastic. So
I
congratulations.
I was stuck at the airport.
Can you speak to just a little bit about, because a lot of the audience for the Instagram account is like other artists as well. If you can you just speak a little bit about like how you've gone about getting into art shows, like if you go through a gallery or if you do like your own submissions, and just kind of like what that process is like?
Yeah, so I really feel like I just started on Instagram, like, posting my stuff, and then people would reach out and want to buy it. And I think that Instagram is good once you get a good following. But I also think it's important to get your work seen, like, especially with, stuff like mine. I feel like it's way better in person, because you can't, really see like all of the castings. Like for example, this one that I was showing you guys earlier, a picture of that could just be, a flat surface. Whereas when you see it in person, there's so much, and my lighting is horrible up here right now, but there's so much shine to it. There's so many like different little pieces, and you kind of just have to see it in person to appreciate even more. Like whenever I mail off my stuff to people and they get it, they're like, oh my gosh, it's so much better than, I even thought it would be. So yeah, that's when I decided that, from feedback from people who would get my stuff, and were like, wow, it's so much better in person. I was like, you know what, I need to start doing some shows and try to get into some galleries. And I kind of just started that, actually. So like Miami in December was my very first like big show that I've ever
Oh,
done.
really? So that's where
Yeah.
I found you at.
Yeah.
Was it Spectrum? I think it, or
Yeah,
Red Dot. It was one
yeah, it
of
was,
them.
yeah, it was, I think it was Spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
because
I was so nervous. Like I brought 10 pieces and I didn't think I was going to sell anything, and I almost sold out. Like, so it was awesome. I got so much positive feedback, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do more of these. It's so much fun, like meeting people. And I miss talking to people about artwork. I was teaching and able to do that with kids, and even though there was only me as the art teacher in the school, I still, like collaborated with other teachers if they wanted to do projects or whatever. So I do miss like talking to people, because I'm here by
especially with
myself.
COVID too. With
Yeah,
COVID,
exactly.
Miami Art Week didn't happen for at least a year. It may have actually been 2 years it didn't happen, but it was for at least a year. For me personally, that's like the one of the most like important events of my life every
Yeah,
year, if you will, because like I
it's
just
so
love
fun.
it. It is so fun. And then to your point about the pieces, that's right. In person, they are a lot more shinier, and you get
Yeah.
more of like the 3D effect when you're
Hmm.
like actually looking at the pieces.
Yeah.
Um,
Even with the video, I feel like it's not giving, them justice. And I put a lot of crystals and stuff. That's also like pretty time consuming, all the little crystals and beads and everything that I add on there. And when they're like in real life, they catch the light so nice. Like the gallery that I'm with, Art Love Gallery, she always puts my stuff like on the front wall. She's like, oh, it draws people in because it's so like eye catching. So and
yeah, you know what it
I
is? It's oh, sorry, go
oh
ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's a few different things. So one, it's like it's the colors, it's the layers, because you have like the resin items on top of the canvas. And then it's
Mhm.
just also just like how cool it is. The ones that you had at Red Dot that caught my eye were like the Space Women with like
Yeah.
the Chanel and the Gucci. And it just it's so unique, the take on it that you have, because there's a lot of astronauts. But then once you add in the other stuff, it makes it so much more unique, and that's what kind of gives it like its own.
Uh-oh,
Just say, oh, sorry, did I cut out there?
you've just for a second.
Oh, no worries. So I was just saying that that kind of gives it its own unique Amy Shekhter type of vibe, because you've
Yeah.
got the different layers. And by the way, I mentioned earlier when we had started the James Bond piece, and I'll definitely do like an HD video of that once I have it, just to kind of
Yeah.
really zoom in and kind of show people what it looks like. And I've got studio lighting, so I can show that properly. Um, Listen, let's open it up to the audience for questions. I've been kind of reading what people have been writing and trying to come up with stuff.
Oh
But
wow, I
if
haven't been
anyone in
reading
the
any.
audience has any questions or anything, now would be a great time to ask those. And I mean, Amy, is there anything else like on your mind, that you'd want to say to, people, aspiring artists, or people who are like myself, just kind of starting out collecting art? Any like words of wisdom while we let people, put in their questions?
You know, I think that you don't just like figure it out in one day. Like it's a process, and you really have to like not give up. It's tough, like making stuff, putting yourself out there. Like I said, when I did my first show in December, I was like so scared that people weren't going to receive my work well, and I would get criticism, and just they wouldn't get it. And it's the most rewarding feeling when somebody like appreciates what you've made and wants it for their home. It's the best thing. So I feel like it's all worth it, you know?
Absolutely. And if you don't go to shows, I never would have found you. So this live stream would have never happened, and I wouldn't have a piece on the way.
Yes.
Um, so
And
I'm,
your
I'm
girlfriend.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of I love Amy's work, but I'm not getting any questions. So I think we'll let it go for another 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And while we're wrapping up, just thank you again so much
Yeah.
for taking the time to do this, and the time that we spent also just kind of talking, prepping for this. I think
Well,
we got a
thank
really,
you.
you're
Like, I
welcome.
appreciate you, and I like how, you told me how you just want people to see what artists do behind the scenes, and I think that's important because really, when do they get to see that? Like, even if you are at shows, they don't, they can appreciate the final product, but they have no idea about the process. And I do feel like a lot of artists, if you reach out to them, they're very like, they don't want to share their process because they artists are secretive. So I do try to share as much as possible because I do have a teaching background, so I like to like inspire people. And I just I really enjoy it. I enjoy meeting people on Instagram. I've met like so many great friends that I've met in person. And I'm also going to be doing some like meet and greets this summer. I'm going to be in California and Provincetown, and in San Antonio. So
Oh,
I'm going to
awesome.
post later on. But like, so if anyone lives in any of those places or nearby, then yeah, I definitely love to like meet people.
Let Amy know. We actually have some questions coming in. It's funny, I actually missed one. Apparently, there's a question box. So, Gabster, thanks for letting me know
Oh,
that.
interesting.
So, there's two questions that came in outside of the box, and there's one in the box. Do you have a couple more minutes to take some questions?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. So, the one in the box, we'll start there, and then I'll go to the ones in the feed.
Mhm.
What has been your most time-consuming piece? When did you make it, and what was the inspiration behind
Oh my gosh, these are hard.
it?
My most time consuming piece. I would say nothing like specifically, but the most time consuming part of the pieces is definitely the resin. Like, so if it has of the casting, so if it has a lot, like at Art Basel, I had one 40-inch Dolly Parton, and the
Oh,
entire
I saw
background
that.
was
Yes.
like ombre from pink to blue to purple of castings, which there were probably hundreds of them on there. And so that's, you know, probably the most time consuming part, is just because you have to mix a small amount. You can't just make all of them at once, you know, because you have a time limit or it starts curing. So I have to gradually make the pieces. I have to color them. I like mix the colors to make the different pigments. And then sometimes they don't turn out because there'll be like a bubble or whatever. And yeah, so it's super time consuming to make those.
There is another part to the question as well, and I'm actually very interested about this too, and it's the inspiration behind it. And I will post the Dolly Parton piece tonight so people know what we're referencing. But I remember when I first looked at it, I was what is going on here? What was it like? What made you decide to do that? Because that is an insane amount of work that must have gone into the background for that piece.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just like I come up with these ideas and I just want to execute them and see if they work or not, you know. Like I've made a lot of Dolly Partons and I've used, you know, probably 3 to 4 different images, but I always want to make them all so different from the next one, you know, because I want everyone that gets a piece of mine that's a collector to have a unique piece. So I'm always, you know, even though I'm trying to stay consistent in my style and technique, I try to differ when it comes to like, you know, how I'm putting the pieces on there. Maybe sometimes you know, like for that one, I cover the entire background. Sometimes I leave them spaced out. Sometimes I'll do their hair out of them or whatever. So yeah, the ideas just come to me.
Keep coming. So
Yeah.
there's an interesting question here on the economics, and obviously share what you're comfortable sharing. The question is from Code Paints, and it's what would you recommend a good split be between an artist and a gallery? So I'm assuming what he's getting at is what this split would be when paintings sell.
Oh
I
yeah.
so
He's my
I'll
friend.
read that.
So he's a perfect example of some random person from Instagram that I met, and he actually like interviewed me when I was in California last year, and he's an artist as well. He's like super cool guy. So, and yeah, I know he's like
Awesome.
just getting started. So for what was the question for a gallery cut,
Yeah,
the percentage?
the split between an artist and a gallery. So I'm assuming
Yeah,
what he's going for there is like what's the split? I think
yeah.
typically it's like 50%, but I
It's
could be wrong.
50-50.
It is,
Every
yeah.
gallery I've been with is 50-50. And I also have had people ask me like, oh, this gallery approached me and they want me to pay this much a month for like to have my work there, you know, but the percentage is lower. I don't recommend that, but I mean, it's up to you. But I feel like if a gallery's approaching you and wanting you to pay money, then it's probably not the best sign.
Yeah, that's kind of sketchy in my not professional opinion. So last question here. How has COVID, if it has, impacted the style of your art?
Um, you know, I don't really think that it has. I know a lot of people like, and this is awesome. Like, I love looking at a painting and thinking like, you know, what is the meaning of this? Where, you know, where were they going? What were they thinking? Um, COVID wasn't fun, but I grew up in Alaska. And so I was used to having like a very sheltered life, I guess.
Okay.
So it didn't really have that much effect on me. You know, lived through the like dark winters for 6 months out of the year.
Opposite of Florida, that's for sure.
Yeah, so I think that, I just, when I think of COVID and like if anything were to ever, happen like that again, I think that people appreciate art even more maybe after that because of they're having to stay in their homes and they want their homes to be somewhere that they enjoy being. And what better way to do that than have art in your walls?
I couldn't agree more. And honestly, COVID brought Art Basel and beyond into existence. So I think COVID gave us everyone an opportunity to just kind of like sit back and think like, what are we passionate about?
Yeah.
Well, Amy, thank you so much. You have been so generous with your time. I think my enthusiasm for your work is shared with a lot of people in the audience. There's been tons of hearts going across the screen. So thank you so much again, and thank everyone for tuning in for this. I'm going to try to do at least one artist a week. Don't hold me to that, but we'll see. But I was super excited to get Amy. Of course, whenever there's an artist whose work you're commissioning, and Amy mentioned my girlfriend has a piece, Marilyn Monroe coming as well. You always want to make sure that you're able to showcase that artist as well. But now I've learned so much more about your process, your background. It's interesting that you grew up in Alaska and live in Florida. You kind of went in the opposite direction there.
Yeah.
But anyway, this has been so fantastic. For those of you that don't know Amy, her Instagram handle is Amy Shekhter. You'll find her. We'll post one of the Dolly Partons tonight. And you can just click there and that'll take you directly to her feed. So I think with that, we'll close it out. Amy, thank you again.
Thanks, Josh.
Take care.